Hello everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here, and here we are. At long last, we have arrived at the final prediction video for the upcoming, what I think is going to be a quartet of DLCs for Total War Warhammer 3. Granted, that has not been confirmed yet. So far, we only know that there are 3 of them, which are going to feature Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh. But it would make a lot of sense for there to be a 4th one that features Khorne. Granted, one could argue that it would have made a lot of sense in Total War Warhammer 2 for there to have been 4 DLCs of Game 1 versus Game 2, and then Creative Assembly proceeded to only do 3 of them and then pulled out a weird-ass Dark Elves versus Skaven DLC for reasons I will never be able to understand. So we shouldn't take things for granted, but let's hope they're going to go on to do Khorne versus 2 other factions. So by now you're probably familiar with the format where I'm just going to kind of talk my way through the various races and units and things like that I believe are an option. I will say that I am very much looking forward to sometime this summer when Shadows of Change is released, or at the very least revealed, so that we can get an idea about the format for these DLC packs. Because right now, like, we know there's 3 legendary lords, a legendary hero, and then a free LC legendary hero with each of them. But we don't know how many units are going to be in it. We don't know if it's going to be like 3 per faction, 2 per faction, 4 per faction, 5, 6, 1, like who knows? We don't know what the monster to unit ratio is going to be, because typically that's kind of a thing where, because monsters tend to be a little bit more of an investment compared to individual units. But it's going to be quite interesting for when we finally get our hands on Shadows of Change, because that will give us enough of, I think, a baseline to extrapolate a lot of information on the following DLCs. So in any event, let's go ahead and dive in, starting with the only thing I feel 100% confident will be in this DLC, which is Khorne. Now, as far as the Legendary Lord goes, there are a couple of options. If you really want to dig down deep, there are always more to be found. But personally, there are 2 that really jump to my mind as realistic Legendary Lord options, since we already have Valkia and Skarbrand. The first of these is the Herald character, which I've talked about a Herald character in every single video. And the Herald for Khorne is Skulltaker, also known as Uzul. Not to be confused with Uzul the Bloodthirster, who is contained within the Slayer of Kings Archaon's sword. Why did they use the same name twice? I don't know, but they did. So Skulltaker is easily the most terrifying of the 4 Herald general characters. So like Epidemius, the Mask, the Blue Scribes, and of course, Skulltaker himself. He is by far the most powerful and devastating of the lot of them, because Skulltaker is not simply your kind of average herald, as far as he's not simply a regular herald of that type, but slightly elevated. Skulltaker is one of Khorne's most deadly agents. And what his job is that Skulltaker functions as the ultimate duelist for Khorne. He is the one that is sent out when there is some notable champion of a race somewhere in the world whose Khorne desires their skull to be added to his throne more than anybody else's. Skulltaker will appear and will basically stalk that person, track them down, and challenge them to a one-on-one fight, where he will inevitably defeat them, decapitate them, and take their skull back to Khorne as a prize. Skulltaker there's a fair bit compared to, as I said with the other 3, there's a fair bit about him in the lore of the Warhammer Fantasy Universe. He actually appears outside of his own, within the storylines of other characters, which is a pretty neat thing about him. As far as what he is kind of like, he is where most of the Khorne characters tend to be kind of like very passionate enraged individuals, lots of like yelling and screaming and bloodthirst. Uzul is said to be far more reserved. He's more of like a cold, calculating force. That often the way he even appears is by himself. He'll just manifest outside of the castle or keep or dwarf hold of whoever it is he's come to kill, and basically declares his challenge. He will loudly announce that he's here to fight so-and-so, and for them to come out and face him, and then he waits. And sometimes the enemy will send out troops, and he will butcher those troops until the enemy champion inevitably comes out to face him. Other times, and granted, he's only really sent after the best of the best. Like he doesn't go out to just hunt down anybody. He's not there to go kill cowards or to kill like people who have insulted Khorne. No, he is specifically seeking out worthy challengers. So it's relatively rare that someone says no to his challenge, though it does happen sometimes. So, but that being said, he has a startlingly good track record. For the almost 10,000 years that Skulltaker has been roaming the planet in the realms of chaos, being a threat to anyone and everyone, he has only lost once. And the one time he lost is when he was sent after none other than Sigmar Heldenhammer, the emperor of the Empire, the founder of the Empire is probably a better way to say that. So the story behind that is excellent. It is, if I recall correctly, it takes place after Sigmar defeats Morkar the Uniter, the first ever Chosen of Chaos. It was either, I know it's definitely after he fights Nagash, but it's either right before Morkar or it's after Morkar. But basically, Sigmar, of course, had proven to be a massive thorn in the side of the Dark Powers. He is constantly screwing up their stuff. He is defeated, especially post-Morkar, he has defeated 2 full-on Chaos invasions at this point, because there was a smaller invasion that was led by a Khorne champion after Sigmar created the Empire in the first place, where the first big siege of Middenheim happened after Middenheim was made part of the Empire, and Sigmar ends up killing a Bloodthirster there in a fight. Though, granted, it wasn't easy for him, but he still beats a Bloodthirster because he's frickin' Sigmar. So, Sigmar is kind of near the absolute zenith of his power by the time Skulltaker comes for him, and Skulltaker manifests outside of what will later be known as Altdorf, and he calls upon Sigmar to fight him, and Sigmar, being the ultimate big badass that he is, picks up Galmaraz and goes to face Skulltaker, where they fight for 3 days and 3 nights. So the two of them have this epic cataclysmic duel where they're throwing down with one another, and all of Sigmar's tribe, so the Umberogans and all of the other various agents who have come from other parts of the Empire or the world, can only watch on as Sigmar fights off against this kind of immortal challenger, this grand duelist who's known for being the end of kings and emperors and champions. But inevitably, Skulltaker can't defeat Sigmar. He cannot beat the man, the myth, the legend, the god amongst men. And Sigmar is able to bring down Galmaraz and obliterate Skulltaker's head, killing him, and sending him back to the realm of chaos, defeated for the first time in his existence. And Skulltaker has held on to that grudge big time for the last 2,500 years. Skulltaker has a very sore spot when it comes to Sigmarites. He really dislikes them because he is kind of forever, you could say, haunted by his one failure to his god, which kind of eats at him a fair bit. But outside of that, he has never lost. He has always claimed the skull that he has gone for. He does show up on like actual battlefields. It tends to be a little more rare that he does that. That's not his usual MO, but sometimes the individual that he's pursuing either is like a rampaging warlord who never stops. So he will Skull Taker will just manifest on a battlefield, and he's powerful enough that when he manifests as blood is being shed, like his mere presence can cause more bloodletters and other demons of Khorne to start spontaneously manifesting around him. So they begin appearing kind of all over the place and start tearing into people and attacking everyone that is around him. So he's able to make his way towards the his enemies. But he is he's a pretty nasty piece of work, though a fantastic character. As far as equipment type stuff go, he does have a mount. He rides on a juggernaut, so he can functionally be taken in a as a blood crusher, which is pretty cool. Kultirin, I believe, is his juggernaut's name, but that makes for a fantastic little design. He also has two items, being the Cloak of Skulls, which is super duper famous. Skull Taker has a very famous model. It's actually gotten a beautiful redesign. I want to say like 2 or 3 years ago. But he got a fairly recent redesign, which he already looked good, but it made him look even better. And his Cloak of Skulls is by far the most famous thing about him, as far as like his design is concerned. And that provides him with quite a nice series of protective wards and abilities. And then he also has the Slayer Sword, being his magical weapon, which helps him chop suey people quite effectively. I do think that he would make for an absolutely fantastic character. Personally, I really love having the Herald characters step in sooner rather than later. Although don't get me wrong, I love my mortals. You know, like I'm still kind of pulling for Egrim in Shadows of Change, but I also would kind of love it if all 4 of these legendary lords were just the Herald characters, just to get them in the game, and then from then on, like, we're pretty much dealing exclusively with mortals. Would probably make it a lot easier. But as far as what he would really bring to the game, I would very much I think what would make him stand out quite differently from Skarbrand and Valkia would really be trying to find a way where he is about luring out enemy characters to really hunt down and kill them. Which, to me, I think the biggest way to do that would probably be to use kind of the Grimgor Ironhide strategy, as far as maybe give him some sort of aura that activates when he's within range of an enemy character. So you're really heavily rewarded for keeping him near enemy characters to have him tear them apart and beat them down. But there is also maybe he could function more with debuffs, because, you know, Skarbrand is kind of this like unstoppable beat stick, right? That you just throw at the enemy, you cause a lot of rampage damage, or rampage to kind of disorganize them, and he's very good, especially thanks to his rampage abilities, at hunting down enemy characters, because as long as he can land a single hit on them, they start to rampage and he kind of draws them in, and then he can just murder them. Valkia is kind of excellent as kind of just a dive down elite assassin type character, especially with her demon shield allowing her to become immortal for, you know, a decent amount of seconds. So she's able to kind of swoop down and stab with Sleipnir and then get the hell out. So the question is, how do you kind of bring Uzul in and have a different interpretation of character killing? A character who, even compared to Valkia and Skarbrand, is supposed to be the character killer, or the hero slayer. And for me, I think the best way to do that is really, like I said, through some kind of aura perhaps, or really focusing in on granting him debuff abilities. So kind of like Wulfric the Wanderer stuff, where he's able to target an enemy character with an ability that just nukes their melee defense and armor, perhaps, so he can just rip them apart. But you know, I think there could be some interesting interpretations there. Though I will say, being able to come in as a mounted character with a Juggernaut is, of course, super duper nice, and would allow him to be pretty heavily armored when he's up on his his becoming in Blood Crusher form. So moving on from him, the other character who I think is very, very likely is Arbal the Undefeated. So Arbal is he's a pretty big fan favorite for a lot of people, especially Warrior of Chaos fans. Arbal, just like a lot of the big warrior characters, it has a pretty prominent focus in the old 5th edition Champions of Chaos book. Arbal is a doozy of a Chaos Lord. Arbal, he's actually a lot older than a lot of people may necessarily think he is, as he was around in ancient times. Well, not insanely ancient, but he was around well before the Empire. And he is known as the Destroyer. And basically he ran around fighting a whole bunch of different people and different cultures, and nobody could defeat him. He was this unstoppable force, ripping his way across the Chaos Waste and all of the realms attached to it. But, you know, he was literally undefeated. Nobody could take him. And so finally he eventually passed north into the Chaos Waste, even further into the realm of Chaos Beyond, which is relatively rare for like really big bad warlords and their entire armies. Generally speaking, they don't tend to go that far north. Most people turn back or just kind of hang around the Chaos Waste, but he went straight into the realm of Chaos because Arbal started making his way to Khorne's realm, because Arbal became bored. He had kind of a unique situation in that this Norscan warlord, which he is actually Norscan, he got so tired of everyone being weaker than him, everyone disappointing him and not being a thrill, not being able to threaten him, that he finally just was kind of like, okay, whatever. And he ended up quitting the mortal plane and went to the realm of Chaos proper, because he hoped that maybe among immortals he could find a worthy opponent. And according to his lore, his express reason for going to the realm of Chaos was not simply to face off against the demons, but to go on to fight Khorne himself. He wanted to actually fight Khorne. But not the little bitch way that Skarbrand did, where Skarbrand kind of just went crazy and backstabbed him, literally. No, Arbal wanted to fight his way up to the Brass Citadel, kick open the doors, and challenge Khorne to a duel. From what we know, he never accomplished this. He either got distracted or satisfied or something, but eventually, apparently, at some point along his journey to the Brass Citadel, he never completed the journey. He did reappear later, many thousands of years later. He showed up during the Great War against Chaos. So during the Great War, the city of Prague, who had a very bad time, for anyone that may not be aware, the city of Prague, which although is still standing today, was actually almost entirely razed by the forces of Chaos, because Azavar Kul broke the city and even went so far as to call down a giant ritual that basically cursed it for eternity, which is why it's known as Prague, the Cursed City. Even when the Kislevites eventually took it back, they like razed it as best they could and like purged it with fire and rebuilt atop the ruins for the city we have now. The city is still cursed and still feels significantly the effects of the corruption of Chaos upon it. But anyway, Arbal played a critical role in the siege. There was a lot of really big, nasty things that happened there. Probably the one that most people that are Total War fans are familiar with is Kolek Suneater, as Kolek Suneater did appear during the siege of Prague, and Kolek actually shattered one of the walls. He showed up and brought down Star Crusher. Basically, it was literally that scene from Attack on Titan when the big Titan kicks the wall open. It was that, but almost, way scarier, because not only did Kolek smash open the wall with one blow from his hammer, but he then proceeded to force himself through the wall and went on to wreck the temple district. But that was not the only breach in the city. either right around the time that Kolek broke through or a smidge afterwards, Arbal actually broke the gates of Prague. So Kolek kind of found a bit of an unconventional way in where he was just like, puny wall, and just broke it and went through. Arbal, on the other hand, was in the thick of it. He was fighting at the gates of Prague itself, where, you know, the defenders had held out for a pretty solid while. And when Arbal arrived, he just massacred everybody. And his axe, which is incredibly powerful, it is one of like the strongest gifts Khorne has ever given anyone, allowed him to quite literally, when he actually fought his way up to the gate, he shattered it. Like he swung at the gate and just exploded it inwards, which allowed everyone to just kind of like pour in, and things got, you know, super duper bad. As far as what makes him really, really famous, though, A, the whole undefeated moniker, and he has a pretty cool design, but B, the big reason a lot of people like him is he has a unique mount. Arbal was gifted the Hound of Khorne, and the Hound of Khorne is, from a lore standpoint, he's like a little kind of out of date because he kind of conflicts with Karanak, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But the Hound of Khorne is said to be one of Khorne's personal flesh hounds, like one of his favorite flesh hounds. And this creature is a flesh hound that is so big that this giant Norscan warlord is able to ride it into battle, and he's not that huge on it. Like, it doesn't look like a man riding a dog. You know, the Hound of Khorne is huge. You know, it's far more on par with like the regular juggernauts. So he's this big, heavily armored guy with a huge old axe, and like a banner coming off of him. And he rides a giant flesh hound into battle that just rips people apart. His axe is the other really big thing about him, the Destroyer of Khorne. And the Destroyer, it is a very, very powerful weapon. It is one of the scarier weapons that Khorne can bestow to anyone, and it allows Arbal to be truly nightmarish. However, it does come with a pretty severe downside, which I don't know how they would. They probably just wouldn't represent it in Total War, because it's a huge downside, which is that if Arbal ever fails, like if Arbal is ever defeated, or he ever flees from battle or suffers some form of defeat, ever, he's completely fucked. Because the whole thing with the axe and the Hound of Khorne is that Khorne is always watching Arbal. Khorne always has his eyes on Arbal when Arbal is fighting. And should Arbal ever fail, Khorne will just immediately smite him. Not by killing him, but by turning him into a chaos spawn. There's like a whole specific thing about, like, if he breaks from combat for any reason, boom, instant chaos spawn. No court, no trial, just boom, you're a tentacle monster now. Have fun. And he's functionally dead. So that is kind of a difficult concept, I think, to translate. Like, without it being just, it would just suck. In my mind, you probably just wouldn't implement that mechanic, or you would maybe like reference the rule but interpret it very, very differently. Because Arbal wasn't unbreakable. He could break from combat. It was just difficult for him to do so. But in the event that he did, he just instantly died and turned into a chaos spawn, which is brutal. But because like I could see it of like, he flees from combat, maybe he like takes damage while he's fleeing, or he just turns into a chaos spawn and counts as dead. But I feel like that would really suck from a gameplay perspective, unless he would have to be so good to make up for that. But in any event, that's Arbal. Very cool character. I honestly feel that those are the two most realistic options. I am kind of like racking my brain a little bit for any kind of like last second people that pop in, because I embarrassed myself by completely forgetting about Takala during the Slanesh thing, which like bleh. There are some other characters out there, like there's Scar Bloodwrath, but Scar Bloodwrath is, he's technically, he's technically, like, he's basically an Age of Sigmar character. He does show up during, the end times, and like we never saw him before the end times. He has a pretty interesting design. He has this whole thing where like he's functionally immortal. If he dies, he basically like melts into a pool of blood and then he just reforms and keeps killing. I really don't feel like he fits this game that way. I don't think he fits the fantasy universe as well. Like I would not be against seeing Scar Bloodwrath at some point, but I feel very much that Scar Bloodwrath would need to be I feel like he would need to be done in like an AOS game, not a Total War game. For me, the most realistic options really are Arbol and Skulltaker. But anyone else, like Kabanda, better fucking never. No Kabanda, not allowed. Never. Get that shit out of here. And there's really nobody else that I would really consider worth looking into that much. So moving on to the legendary hero material, I feel pretty freaking confident the legendary hero is going to be a Khorne character, because Khorne has two big ones that I honestly think the free LC character and the DLC character could very likely be Khornate. The first one is Scylla Anfringrim. So Scylla Anfringrim was a incredibly famous warrior, a Norskin, who was like this super big badass, and his tribe loved him, and he was like insanely awesome and won all these crazy wars, and he fought all over the world, and Khorne kept showering him with more and more gifts. So like Khorne gave him like the strength of like the musculature and strength of a large ape. So he has like these big ape arms, and like, you know, he's easily as strong as a gorilla. And then Khorne blessed him with like a scaly hide that makes him quite difficult to deal damage to. And he blessed him with a sentient tail that has a mouth that like rips people apart and bites them and stuff like that. And he kept blessing him with all these mutations. And one day, Scylla Anfringrim fought his way into the depths beneath a mountain, where he ended up, if I recall correctly, fighting a big old host of Gorgers, Ogre Kingdom Gorgers. And he eventually killed kind of like this Gorger king, but he I think it was Gorgers. It was something, but he fights these creatures under the mountain, and he kills all of them. He brutally slaughters all of them. And Khorne blesses him with the final gift, which is that he gives him the mind of a ravening beast. So unfortunately for Scylla, he becomes a chaos spawn. He loses his sanity, he loses his functionally his sentience, and he just becomes like a mindless raving monster. He no longer is capable of thinking. He is like he has enough intelligence that he could still talk, but the only thing he ever says is he literally just screams, "Kill for Khorne, kill for Khorne, kill for Khorne." Like, that's all he says. He just screams that phrase over and over and over amidst various monster noises. And he is devastatingly powerful. He's very, very terrifying. He's able to just like rip through battle lines and kill people, but he can't lead armies. Like he's literally just a creature at this point. His tribe has a lot of respect for him, and they kind of take care of him. So they basically like tend to him and like lead him to battlefields where they unleash him against various opponents. So like his tribe is kind of who you deal with in order to acquire him for your side, though he would still answer Khorne's call if necessary. But he's a terrifying force to be reckoned with. But he's just a full-on chaos spawn. He doesn't have any items, but he is unbreakable, and he is an absolute beast in melee. And he travels across the battlefield very, very quickly. because unlike, some Chaos Spawn where they have like weird stubby legs or tentacles, or they're just like a roiling mass of flesh, Scylla is very stable. He's not mutating any further. It's just that his mutations have degenerated him to the point where he is simply a Chaos Spawn and will never leave that. And he remained that way until he died in the end times. I can't remember. I want to say Grimnir killed him, but he dies at the Siege of Averheim. But so that's Scylla. I think he would make for an excellent legendary hero. I think I really enjoy seeing some of these heroes we've been getting who are available to multiple factions. I think Scylla would be the exact same. I think Scylla Anfringam would be good to be available to the Warriors of Chaos, the Khorne Monogod factions, and Norska. I think he should be available to all three, just like how, Ulrika is available to the Empire and Kislev, or Gotrek and Felix are available to tons of different factions. I think that would be quite nice. The other option, but like I said, I honestly think we'll get both because I think they're just kind of easy inclusions. And a lot of people would really enjoy them both. The other one is the goodest boy in the Warhammer Fantasy Universe, Karanak, the Hound of Khorne. So Karanak, if you couldn't tell, is kind of the updated lore version of the hound that Arbal rides on. Karanak is a 3-headed flesh hound. He is heavily inspired by Cerberus, the 3-headed hound of the underworld, and he is Khorne's personal pet, and also his ultimate tracking hound. And Karanak's job is whenever someone insults Khorne or like violates the warrior creed, so they're a coward, or maybe they're a wizard that draws Khorne's ire for some particular innovation or achievement they've made through spells, or someone is like talking smack about Khorne somewhere in the world, he will unleash Karanak to hunt them down. And Karanak sucks to be hunted by because there is no way to escape him. Karanak cannot tire, and Karanak never needs to sleep. He is literally he is the endless hunt manifested into a creature that will pursue you until he inevitably catches you and absolutely rips you apart and takes your skull back home. He always gets you in the end. Even if it's not necessarily because he himself catches you, but he will drive you through terror and fear in your hopes to avoid him to a point where either he will kill you or something else will. And Karanak is pretty nightmarish because so he has 3 heads, right? And his 3 heads, it's not just an arbitrary Cerberus reference. They actually do different things. Not really in a gameplay sense, but as far as how they track you. The first head tracks you through the physical realm, so it knows where you are in like the mortal plane, and is able to pursue you no matter where you may go or where you may hide. The second head can pursue you through time, because in the event that you are somehow able to time travel or use some other really weird shenanigans, like maybe you flee to Athel Loren or the Realm of Chaos or something and try and use weird dimensional pocket crap to escape. Nope, that's what the second head's for. And the third head can track you through the trails of your own mind. And you may say, what the fuck does that mean? And what that means is that Karanak can track you in your sleep. Yep. There are many stories about how individuals will go to sleep, or they're finally they're so exhausted they lay down for a quick nap or they pass out or whatever, and in their nightmares or just their dreams, Karanak finds them and he attacks them, and it pulls a Freddy Krueger where they wake up, or he kills them in their dreams and they die in real life, but usually they wake up and Karanak follows them into the waking world. So they awaken, and he follows them. He follows that trail of their mind from that dreamscape into reality and proceeds to maul them to death in the real world. And there is no escaping from it. Now, granted, it's not unusual for regular fleshhounds to pursue many of the people that Karanak would pursue. Regular fleshhounds, you can at least like have a reasonable chance of killing and getting away from. But Karanak, no sir, he is gonna get you. So yeah, he's a fairly terrifying good boy. That is absolutely adorable. He also has, of course, like a collar of Khorne on steroids, because he has 3 of them. So he is virtually completely immune to magic. And overall, if he's coming for you, you're basically screwed. Especially because when you're hunted by Karanak, your skull, well, all of you generally will be brought back to Khorne, but because he'll usually take your entire corpse back. But Khorne keeps the skull, the rest goes to Karanak, who eats it. And sometimes, as a treat, if Khorne has a particularly unworthy skull, so like skulls are brought to him from someone that is not worthy of being added to the skull throne, he just tosses them to Karanak as a treat, and he crunches down on them and feeds upon them and the essence of the individual contained within, which is not a good way to go. And yeah, Karanak's pretty spooky. There's even actually an incident in around 2460 of the Imperial calendar, which by like Total War Warhammer start time standards was about 50 years ago. And what happened was that there was a wizard who intentionally, this guy was an idiot. Rykart Drauborg was a moron and summoned Karanak into the Gold College. He was a gold wizard himself. He summoned Karanak in the hopes of getting Karanak to murder his rivals. Well, he was a dumbass because he thought he could contain Karanak using various magical wards. But like I told you, Karanak is functionally completely immune to magic. So Karanak broke through the wards and absolutely murdered the shit out of him, and then proceeded to go on a rampage throughout the entirety of the Gold College and pretty much killed the entirety of everyone who was inside. So obviously there were gold wizards who were not there at the time, so they survived, but everyone who was within the Gold College basically was like living through the movie of Alien and got completely wiped out with very, very few survivors before Karanak was finally dealt with. Though whether that's because he had killed everyone he could find and left of his own volition, or someone finally just managed to banish him, is not said. But yeah, no, he's pretty terrifying, but an awesome character. So moving on from that, that's my lords and heroes. For units, definitely Khorne Gorse. You know, give me some big, sexy beastmen with big old axes and stuff, lots of armor piercing frenzy and all that jazz. I also think for our monster, we're going to get the Slaughter Brute. Now, the Slaughter Brute is not technically a Khornate monster. It is technically undivided. It cannot take marks of chaos. It is an undivided creature, and it has the 8-pointed star of chaos undivided on its back. However, it is very Khornate in theme, and it has shown up in a lot of Khornate books. Like whenever you have like a Khornate warlord, oftentimes there is a freaking Slaughter Brute somewhere in the area. Slaughter Brutes are terrifying, big melee beasties. They have a lot of heavy scales that give them pretty high armor. They have lots of limbs that are just good for just ripping people apart. And they are, they're unnaturally skilled for monsters. Like they normally have extremely high weapon skill, which is like the equivalent of melee attack and melee defense, because the reason they have like an 8-pointed star in their back, made out of like various things stabbed into them, and there's a ritualistic sword stabbed into them, and what the sword is placed into their back by a warlord, or some kind of chaos champion. And the reason they do that is it creates like a psychic link or a mental bond between that champion and the Slaughter Brute that allows that champion to control the Slaughter Brute as if it were them, functionally. So these creatures are able to fight with the skills of a Chaos Lord or whatever champion is controlling them, which makes them significantly scarier than almost any other monster when you couple that with their insane levels of strength and durability. So I think the fun way to represent this would probably be that the best way I could think is that it would probably need to have an aura where if there is a friendly character within range of that aura who's not, maybe a friendly character that's not a magic user. So like friendly unit, lord or hero that is not a spellcaster within range, it buffs the melee attack and melee defense of the Slaughter Brute to represent that. Now granted, if the person who the Slaughter Brute is bound to dies, that causes the Slaughter Brute to go back to being kind of typical monster levels of skill. And it also goes on like a horrifying rampage as it kills everybody around it. So the only way I could think that would even make any sense is like maybe it would have the rampage rule unless there was a character within that radius, like maybe a 30 or 55 meter radius, that if a character's there who's not a spellcaster, they grant melee attack, melee defense, and they also disable the rampage rule. But if there's no character within that range, the creature has significantly worse melee attack and defense, and it also is vulnerable to the rampage rule. I think that could be a reasonable interpretation of that rule. So yeah, the Slaughter Brute. For the third option, I mean, we've already got the Super Knights. We've already got like a couple of functionally new units with like demons and stuff. I don't know. They could. I mean, we've got we've even got like the unique Gore-Beast Chariot for Khorne. We've got pretty much everything, really. I think they would kind of at that point probably default to, they could do another monster if they wanted to be super cool. I would not say no to a Chimera. I would not say no to a big old fuck you Chimera. The 3 heads, you got the bird head, the lion head, and the dragon head, and the dragon head breathes fire, and the bird head has got like, the terrifying sharp beak, and the lion head, I think it has like a special roar or something. I don't remember. And then it's got the serpentine tail that also has a mouth, and it's got like poison attacks. Like chimeras are fucking terrifying in Warhammer. They are one of the strongest chaos creatures overall because they're such a terrifying mix of features, being that they can breathe fire like dragons. They're quite fast. They're reasonably well armored because of all their scales. They have poisoned attacks. And they also get some other unique benefits from the other 2 heads. So they are a bitch to deal with in Warhammer, and they are one of the most powerful chaos creatures you'll find in other parts of the world. So I really do feel like a Chimera would be an excellent way to kind of finish off this kind of wave of chaos DLCs. And I mean, the Chimera is a angry, monstrous beast that is incredibly difficult to control, and is notoriously well known for kind of going after everybody. It's not exactly, it's not really on anybody's side. Though, traditionally when a chaos army does show up, the chimeras will often join up with them and fight alongside them. But that's not to say that they're necessarily the most trusted of creatures. They can be quite difficult to deal with. Oh yeah, and they can have regeneration. I forgot about that. They can regenerate. Yeah, no, they're kind of absolutely fucking bullshit, to be honest. So I honestly think that would be a really cool monster to cap off with. But of course, they could just like do some kind of unit champion made into a new unit. Beyond that, who would Khorne be facing off against? That is the question, isn't it? I think so in my mind, I am basing this on absolutely nothing. Well, actually, that's not true. Looking at Shadows of Change and Thrones of Decay, it feels like there's kind of a theme relating the 2 races that the Chaos guys are fighting, which is that those 2 races seem to be somehow related. Like Kislev and Grand Cathay are both northern border races that, hold the line against Chaos. The Empire and Dwarfs are so closely related, it's not even funny. And they also kind of have like a very notable antagonistic relationship with Nurgle. Slaanesh probably going to be fighting the elves. So what is Khorne going to do? I think there are two possible paths. I think the first path is that Khorne is going to go all in on blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne, meaning that he's going to go after the races that have those the most in abundance, being the vampires. I would think the vampire counts, just because they're kind of so desperately in need of a DLC, and the Tomb Kings, who also could use a big fat DLC. So I'm going to go ahead and walk through my ideas on what that would look like, and then I'll talk about the other potential route, in my mind. So it could be Vampire Coast. Granted, I don't think it is. I feel like the Vampire Coast are going to be better saved for facing off against, Yin Yin when she, gets put into the game. Though there's a chance that Yin Yin is the Cathay character, but it could also be the Monkey King. I don't know. It could also be Shihong, but like, I feel like they would need to face off against another naval power. And, I feel like that's what the Jade Vampires are going to be. So I really don't think it's going to be the Vampire Coast. As far as vampire counts are concerned, when you do blood, you gotta go with the Mortarch of blood, Neferata. She is the big bad vampire queen herself, the original vampire, the one who created the elixir, the flawed elixir of eternal life, that created vampirism. The original, the Queen of Lamia, the nowadays Queen of the Silver Pinnacle, a character who has kind of been looming over Warhammer 2 and Warhammer 3 ever since we got the expanded map, when her faction, forget what their faction is called, but the Silver Pinnacle is a location on the map. It is ruled over by a vampire faction that literally has Neferata's head and helmet as their insignia, or as their faction icon, whatever it's called. So I feel like Neferata is, whatever the vampire counts get next, it is Neferata. I just don't know if this is when she would appear. But assuming this is when we would see her, I think Neferata would make for a fantastic character. I think she would come with a very Lamian / vampire themed focus, with that heavy focus on blood. Because like Khorne hates, all the Dark Gods hate the undead, but Khorne hates vampires more than the other forms of undead because they are thieves as far as he's concerned. They steal blood from him. They are leeches of the worst sort. Blood that should be offered to Khorne, returned from that which it is given, is instead being usurped and taken by these parasites. Khorne has a huge hate boner for vampires, almost more than anything else. So Neferata, I think, would make kind of for an excellent antagonist in that sense, especially because being kind of the more diplomatic, sneaky of the vampires, if anything, she's kind of like stands so heavily opposed to Khorne, who's kind of more of that raging hatred, almost that barbarian, screaming, chop, 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 messy frontline fighter. Neferata opposes that in so many interesting ways. So you have Neferata. I think coming with Neferata, with her being introduced as a new mount option, as well as a new generic, well, I don't know if you'd be able to get it as a generic unit, but at the very least, a new mount option, though I would kind of count it as a monster, would be the Palanquin, the Blood Palanquin. Is that what it's called? I want to say Blood Palanquin. I feel like that's not the correct term, but basically it's like a Mortis engine, but it's the alternate way to build it. So like if you bought a Mortis engine kit, you could build it as the Vampire Blood Palanquin or as the Mortis engine. So it's kind of this large throne. Maybe it's a blood throne. I feel like that's what it is, but it doesn't matter. You'll know what I'm talking about, and so will Skeleton, and we'll have like a cool little image up here. So these thrones of blood thrones, whatever they're called, they have some really, really cool features. So just like the Mortis engine, they are carried around by an ethereal host of like like spirits that are attacking anyone that's in front of it. But they have some very different effects on the battlefield, because where the Mortis engine is more of kind of like a floating like damage over time dealer that also supports nearby units. So it's kind of like a very heavy support piece. The Thrones of Blood are far more of like hardcore buff pieces for the vampire riding it. So vampires or vampire lords or ladies, in the case of the Lamians, and Neferata herself, get some pretty significant powers riding on these things. Not only is its crew 2 lesser vampires who, handmaidens, who are very, very dangerous combatants, which, you know, now you're fighting 3 vampires instead of just 1. But on top of that, there is this pool of blood in the center that is a scrying pool. So it allows the vampire riding it to kind of like see the future and affect things around them, but it also gives them foreknowledge of when they're going to be attacked. So they have a very high ward save. It gives them some really powerful defenses. On top of that, they have, you functionally get like a very, like an even more powerful version of kind of the mesmerizing gaze ability. So you have these like kind of like bound spells, or more than likely just an ability that would allow you to pick an enemy unit and just debuff the shit out of them, to really like mess with this unit. Potentially could cause like maybe a rampage effect. That way the enemy player loses control of them, or it could just be that it causes like a significant debuff, either to their like melee attack and leadership or some other set of stats, that could really allow for some powerful stuff. But the big thing is that it would be a pretty heavy hitting piece, that would be able to maneuver around the battlefield and cause a significant amount of damage to those it runs into, because it's got like a bunch of vampires on it and it's just good at like really cutting into people. It would also give you significantly more health on your vampire lord or vampire hero, and it also comes with a pretty nice set of buffs and debuffs that you apply to targets to really screw with them. I also want to say it had like a particular ability to screw with like characters specifically. It also had an ability where if you wanted to attack it, you actually had to pass a check. Otherwise you would, either, I can't remember if it's, you would not be able to attack it at all, or your attack would just be debuffed, but I would give it an aura that lowers melee attack. Just like that represents that. So it would just like have like a, maybe 15 to 30 meter aura that if an enemy is within it, you take like a small penalty to your melee attack. Because that is an extremely powerful ability and would make an awesome centerpiece for any army. So there's that. That could function as a mount and as like an individual model. I also would like to see, with Neferata, I would really love to see maybe Lamian Guard. Which Lamian Guard appear in 2 forms depending on like what books you're reading. In some stories, they're kind of more like Tomb Guard. So they are wights or skeletal guards that are kind of guard in Tomb King-like aesthetic. And they are, they're significantly more skilled than regular Grave Guard. And they act as bodyguards to Neferata and other high-ranking Lamians. Alternatively, they could be powerful foot vampires, that are meant to kind of serve as bodyguards, directly to so like they're lesser vampires, that kind of serve more of a protection or bodyguard role, as opposed to like blood dragons being the more offensive vampire unit type role, which I think could make for a really interesting dynamic, having like heavily armored vampires with like great weapons, or maybe like shields or halberds or something, who are set more on defense rather than offense. We're also, let's see, if there were going to be 1 or 2 other units, I think for me, I would very much, we're actually missing like quite a number of things. I would not mind seeing bat swarms. I think bat swarms could be cool. Like now that Nurglings have been done, I really feel like swarms are completely achievable. Though granted, like where do you draw the line between fell bats and bat swarms? So I could see the argument there. Other stuff, Spirit Hosts. Spirit Hosts would be extremely cool. Spirit Hosts would very much function as like a tar pit unit. So it's a unit of ghosts that just has a lot of health. They're not really there to deal damage, though I would say they should have pure armor piercing, kind of like we've seen with the ethereal units. You know, they have pure AP. They don't deal any non-AP at all, but they don't really have very good melee attack. They're mostly there with just to have a ton of health and to drag you down. Like their goal is just to swarm you, get on you, claw you, and they're probably not going to kill you, though they will take away your health if you just ignore them. But they're mainly there to just get you wrapped up and keep you stuck in combat. I think that would make for an exceptionally good unit. Another unit I could see with Neferata that I think would be really cool would be animated armor. Often referred to as cursed blades or cursed armor. Unholy, they're called unholy blades. So unholy armor, unholy blades, whatever you want to call them. These are quite literally animated suits of armor with blades. So you would see, I think from an animation perspective, they would be so badass to look at. But you would just see these empty suits of armor moving around the battlefield, wielding like swords and shields or maybe great weapons, depending. Like if you want them to have an armor piercing role, give them great weapons. If you want them to have more of like just a pure tank role, sword and board. But I think they would make for an exceptionally badass unit that you could do some really cool animation things because they don't have physical bodies. It's literally just an empty suit of armor animated by dark magic. They are said to be very, very scary because they're super hard to kill because there's no flesh. You have to literally shatter the armor or at least deal enough damage that the dark magic isn't able to animate it any further. So I imagine they would have a very, very, very high armor save, or alternatively, like a pretty decent armor save and high physical resistance to kind of represent the fact that like without magic, you can't really hurt them very effectively. But I could see that being a very, very cool unit that conceptually has like pretty high defenses and is able to actually, throw down pretty hard. With other types, deal some pretty reasonable damage and probably I would probably say very, very low melee defense, but reasonably high weapon strength and melee attack and extremely high armor and, resistances, to represent that like they don't have fleshy bodies. So it's harder to damage them. But maybe at the cost of like a lower health pool, just some ideas. Beyond that, there are like numerous other units. Some of them I think would do better. Granted, I will say, I hope it's not vampire counts. Genuinely, I hope it's not, because I want the vampire counts to get a Champions of Chaos theme DLC, which I'm actually going to be doing a video about later this week. So we'll be swinging back around to this. But I think that's enough to kind of get the gist of it. If they do a legendary hero, it's got to be Conrad. It has to be Conrad. Conrad von Karstein is the last big vampire character missing from the actual Vampire Counts army book. He has no business being a legendary lord. He has zero business being a legendary lord. He can't cast magic. Conrad is so bad of a vampire, he doesn't even know how to use magic. But he is a brutal combatant. He is absolutely fucking batshit insane. He even had a rule called one bat short of a belfry, representing how insane he is. And he is incredibly violent. He wields twin swords, and he was the blender vampire. He would just like through people. And he was such a profound, murderer and violent tornado in combat that he earned the respect of the Blood Dragon bloodline purely through the carnage that he caused, which actually convinced the Blood Dragons to join up with him in the first place, which is how the Von Karsteins kind of got that relationship up and running. Vlad was not able to get the Blood Dragons to serve with him, though presumably because he didn't really want to. But Conrad actually forged a full-on alliance with Wallach Harkin, the Grand Master of the Blood Dragon Order, the Blood Knights, and their founder. Not the founder of the bloodline, that's Abarash, but like the actual like Blood Knights from Bloodkeep were founded by Wallach. And Wallach basically served as Conrad's ultimate champion. And he was, Wallach's pretty terrifying. But Wallach, I feel like, is more legendary lord material. If we ever see him. But Conrad, legendary hero. I think he makes for a perfect beat stick character that is just like, what if I had a vampire that, like, I take all of that potential magic power and just throw that shit out the window and put it purely into melee stats. That's Conrad. But yeah, that's it for vampire counts. Tomb Kings. For Tomb Kings, legendary lord, it's got to be Ramhotep the Visionary. I refuse to acknowledge any other options. I understand there are some cool Tomb Kings like King Far and all them, but like, get the fuck out of here with that. It's got to be Ramhotep the Visionary. He is the Necrotect legendary lord. He is an angry skeleton. He, like, you think the other Tomb Kings are wrathful? Son, no. Ramhotep the Visionary is hatred put into a bony body. He is pissed all the time because basically he was like this. He was the visionary. He was the most incredible artisan of the entirety of Nehekhara's timeline. So like for this nation that existed for hundreds and hundreds of years, Ramhotep was the greatest there ever was. And he even went so far as he would normally in Tomb King culture or Nehekharan culture, whenever a necrotect would finish creating a masterpiece, they would be ritually killed and mummified and stored kind of within their final piece as like an acknowledgement of their skill and like a great service to them. And they would be, you know, their bodies would be very carefully blessed and all this stuff, which is why the necrotects are actually fairly in control of their faculties and very well preserved because they were very deeply cared for. And that was a sign of deep reverence to go through that process. But Ramhotep was like, nah, fuck that. Because whenever he would finish one of his great projects, he would be like, that's pretty good, but I can make something better. So he would always end up either assassinating someone and putting their body where he was supposed to be, so they would mummify that person instead, or he would like make a deal with one of his contemporaries by like pretending to be them, and then when he would finish his work, the tomb guard or whatever, everyone would show up and be like, hey, time to mummify you, and that particular necrotech would be like, what's going on? And they would they would just take that guy and mummify him alive. They'd kill the poor bastard and be like, great job. And he's like, why are you doing this? I don't understand what's happening. So like he kept giving credit of his work to other people so that he could continue to go on to make other things. Eventually he did finish a masterpiece that he was satisfied enough with that he allowed himself to, you know, go through that final process when he was much older. But when Ramhotep woke up, all necrotechs are very angry individuals. They are full of hatred, like shocking amounts of hatred for a Tomb King, which is saying a lot, because when all of them woke up, all of their works had basically been destroyed. They had been worn away by time and the harsh environment of the desert, or they had been plundered by invaders or destroyed by rampaging armies, whatever. Ramhotep woke up and all of his shit was broke. And he is a spiteful motherfucker as far as he's already started restoring everything, but there's actually a pretty hilarious recorded incident where during a battle, a steam tank accidentally slams into a wall he made and breaks part of it. He gets so mad that he basically unleashes like an entire campaign to go after that specific steam tank and its entire crew. And he's like, I'm going to kill everyone associated with this thing, and I will pave a path from their bones from where I killed them all the way back to my wall to repair it with their broken bodies. Like he is a salty son of a bitch. So it'd be excellent to see him, especially because he would come with some really cool things. As far as new units are concerned, for me, I would want Elite Ushapti. So I want Elite Ushapti that have great weapons. Right now, we only have the dual wielders and the bows. So I would want like Ushapti Ancients or whatever the fuck they're called, or Ushapti Chosen, and they have the big fuck you two-handed weapons. I want a Kimric Titan. So that would be the big monster piece. So the Kimric Titan is a fuck you sized construct. They are colossal. and they have some pretty terrifying powers. I did a horror I called it the Monstrous Arcanum series 2 Octobers ago. So not last October, but the one before that. And they had an episode dedicated to them. They have some wild powers. They're able to like unleash these blasts that turn people into sand. They're able to literally open their jaws and rip open a portal to the realm of the dead. And like devour, like it's like a vortex that sucks in the souls of everyone in front of them. Terrifying ability. They have another ability that like blots out light in an area. They have all sorts of crazy powers. And they also are often crewed by like the greatest heroes to ever live in Nehekara, or in some cases entire dynasties, which is insane. So that would make, and they're like giant beetle constructs. So they're like giant scarab monsters. So they have a very unique design. And then the final unit I would do for the Tomb Kings would probably be an elite. I would either do like, I would probably do heavy chariots. So like an elite heavy chariot unit. So like all the current Tomb King units of chariots are like 3s, right? Or units of 6. So you've got you have your skeleton chariot archers, that there's 6 of them and they've got bows, and then you got regular ones that are just 6 of them and they don't have bows. I would love a heavy chariot version where maybe they have like they're a little spikier, maybe they got more exotic blades on the wheels, they're made of like heavier material, maybe the horses are like a little armored, and they have like a full-on tomb guard crew instead of regular skeletons, and there's only 3 of them because they just hit so much harder. I think that would be like a really nice unit and would do great for people, especially that want to run chariot themed armies around their Tomb Kings or like Cetra or whatever. I also very, very much, I totally forgot to do generic characters. I will swing back and do that in a moment. So yeah, as far as generic characters go for everything I just did, for Khorne, we already have everything for Khorne. We even have cultists. Maybe like a lord, a new lord for Khorne, like a high priest of Khorne could be kind of cool, because Khorne can't have wizards, right? But he, we have the cultist. I think we could fudge a priest. Not necessary. Could also just do like a maybe a Doom Bull of Khorne, since we already have the Minotaurs. I think a Doom Bull of Khorne would be pretty hot. I would not say no to that, to be honest. So either a Doom Bull of Khorne or a high priest who maybe has like, maybe he's able to like call upon the powers of Khorne to, he's very buff centric. All the Khorne characters we have now are kind of just elite fighters. I think a lord level support character could be pretty fun. Maybe he's able to like unleash an aura, an active ability or a passive ability where he's able to convert like damage being dealt into healing for nearby units. So like he activates a temporary power, whatever, that heals everyone around him equal to the amount of entities slain. That could be really cool. And very powerful too, I might add. Then for the vampire counts, I would love to see the vampire hero get an alternate build where we get a male version. So we get a male vampire hero who has a different weapon setup. So like where the female wields like the single-handed blade, I guess, maybe the male could have like twin swords or a great weapon or a halberd, just something different. And maybe he comes with, same Lords of Magic is fine with me. But just a different build, right? Maybe with a couple of little specifics, just for some more variety. And then for the Lord, I would personally very much like to see the Lamian vampire made significantly more unique. So just get like a full-on brand new model. And also, like, could we please maybe clean up the Vampire Lord animations? Vampire Lord and Hero, like, especially the ones that are only wielding one-handed weapons. They have, like, these really just terrible animations. Like, Vlad von Karstein, Isabella, all of them could really use a cleanup on their animations. Kind of like how we did with Archaon, I think would be really nice. So anyway, back to the Tomb Kings. For their characters, Lord, Lich High Priest. Has to be the Lich High Priest. We are missing it. I hate only having one Lord option with Tomb Kings. It sucks. I hate it so much. So please, 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 Lich High Priest, give me access to magic. And then the hero should be the Tomb Herald. And for the Tomb Herald, I want a fucking banner hero. I want banner heroes, chat, community, people, whoever, aliens, lizardmen, whoever's watching this. Like I want a guy that has a big, awesome golden Tomb King banner in one hand, and in his other hand, he's got a Kopesh or whatever. And his job is that he's buffs. He brings buffs to the table. He's all about buffing. He has some guardian powers, so he's able to like protect characters. Maybe he's a more extreme version, so like where the regular Tomb Prince only has normal guardian, let the Tomb Herald have an ability where like he can use an active on another character, and he like takes damage for them for a limited period of time, or he like maybe he takes damage but they heal as he like siphons his life force into them. But give him like, make his banner where he's able to like awaken the full power of the tomb or the Tomb King undead around him, so he's able to like give them buffs to their leadership and damage as he like restores some of their faculties, or I don't know, but like do that, like make him awesome. Make it where he can assign himself to one of the different, so like the regular Tomb Kings we have now can offer themselves to, I believe, 4 of the Pantheon. They can do Nehek. Oh my gosh. They can do Nehek, Thra, Usirian, and Asaf, I think, are the 4 that are available for the regular Tomb Kings. So maybe the Herald has access to the lesser known gods. I think you have like Jeff. Jeff? I don't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to go look it up. But there are numerous other Tomb King gods. So maybe let's use some of the lesser known gods. That could be really cool. Maybe more of like the totemic gods that are represented by animals. And for a legendary hero for the Tomb Kings, Prince Apophis. Do it, CA. Do it, you cowards. Do it. I know you want to do it. I have heard Rich Aldridge say to my face that they're like, oh, Prince Apophis would be really cool, but like tech is hard. Like y'all could do it now. Nurgling swarms were like a perfect tech demo. Like between the Nurgling swarms and the and like just the regular swarm tech they've used for like the Casket of Souls and like all that stuff, it's time for Prince Apophis. They can totally do it now. So yeah, Prince Apophis, super awesome assassin focused character who is literally a swarm of living flesh eating scarabs that he has a breath attack where he literally vomits his body of scarabs onto people, and those people are heavily disoriented / eaten alive. Like could deal some really good damage and causes like a lot of disruption. And he should be all about killing characters and causing terror because he's awesome. He also regenerates, which is pretty hype. So yeah, that's one path. The other path, so we did the undead. The other path is Khorne just goes crazy on destruction. Because a lot of what we've been talking about has been chaos versus order. And it's like, oh, we have chaos versus undead. But what about chaos versus destruction? And what I mean by that is, what if we just had the bash DLC, where it's Khorne versus Greenskins and Ogre Kingdoms? I think that could actually be super hype, and that's what I'm personally hoping for. Because the undead one, as much as I want Tomb Kings to get another DLC, I really want the Vampire Counts to have their own self-contained DLC and not share it with the Tomb Kings. Or Khorne. I want the Vampire Counts to have their own thing, which we'll talk about later. So, what do I think we would see for Greenskins and Ogre Kingdoms? I'll start with the Ogre Kingdoms first, because they're a little easier. So for Ogre Kingdoms, because we did not get him with the Chaos Towards this free LC, I really, really, really would like to see... Oh my god. His name, I had it, and it just flew out of my brain. The big fat... The Lord of the Ironskin, Gark Ironskin, there we go. Gark Ironskin, the tyrant of the Ironskin tribe, who is very, very unique because he's the only ogre character who is mounted. Because Gark Ironskin rides not a Rhinox, a Mecha Rhinox. Because his Rhinox was actually killed during a battle, I want to say with the troops from the the Imperial province of Wizenland or Nuln. And after his Rhinox was killed, thanks to his very favorable relationship with the Chaos Dwarves, they made him a gift, and they forged for him a demon Rhinox made out of demonic infused metal. So he functionally rides a Juggernaut of Khorne, except for it's the size of a fucking Rhinox, which is huge. It's so big. So he rides this giant, fiery demon mecha rhinoceros creature, and he himself is a beast. So I think Gark Ironskin, being kind of the mounted monster themed DLC, would be super fucking badass. As far as what would come with him, I think you would do... he's not the only option though. The other option is, of course, Golgthag Maneater. The originator of the Maneater name. Golgthag Maneater has a very, very cool design. He also is kind of an interesting world explorer. He's shown up literally everywhere on the planet, and he's fought for everybody, good guys and bad and neutral. Golgthag Maneater also is kind of like a fascinating jack of all trades, and that he is skilled with so many different kinds of weapons. It's fucking ridiculous. And in tabletop, he actually had this hilarious rule where you did not know what magic items that Golgthag Maneater would have when he showed up on the battlefield. Because when he showed up on the tabletop, you rolled on a random chart to show all of the different random magic items he had picked up before he appeared on the battlefield. So he was unique every single game, which was a very, very cool special rule. And I would love to see him have a mechanic where he's all about like those mercenary contracts, but his are like way more ludicrous, and he's able to like just farm magic items. And like gets all sorts of like crazy goodies. You know, I would love for him to have like a bunch of unique items, kind of like how the Chaos Dwarfs and Grand Cathay get unique items to their caravans. It'd be cool if Golgthag Maneater could get like a bunch of purple items from his mercenary contracts that represent him like helping the different races, and they give him something really cool that you could either give to him or one of his other characters. So either the super badass mercenary general Golgthag Maneater or the terrifying monstrous rider Gark Ironskin. As far as lords and heroes go, for lords, I would, and kind of heroes, I would really like the rest of the lords of magic we are owed. Currently, we only have Lore of Beasts and Lore of the Maw. If we could get my Lore of Death and Lore of Heavens casters for Slaughtermasters and Butchers, that would be awesome. So please give us those. I would also very much like to get the Bruiser hero. So the Bruiser is literally just the hero level tyrant. So, you know, melee fighter, maybe with some bonus skills. That's all we need. If they want to create something unique, you know, feel free to maybe toss in some kind of hunter lord, or maybe some kind of like Uber Maneater that it's like very customizable. Could be a lot of fun. But I don't really need those. But don't get me wrong, they'd be cool though. You know, maybe some kind of lord that can take mounts would be fun, so they could ride like a Mournfang or a Rhinox. You know, whatever. Any of those would be neat. As far as units go, I think it would depend on who the lord is. If Gark Ironskin is the lord, I would do monstrous creature type DLC. So I would give us Bone Grinder Giants, which Bone Grinder Giants, what a giant is to like a troll, a Bone Grinder Giant is to a giant. So they are fucking huge giants that are significantly more powerful and tough than your regular giant. So we're talking well over 10k health, and they're out there like punching mammoths in the face and like wrestling with Dreadsaurians and shit. They are huge, scary giants. And where giants wield like regular trees, maybe as a club, a Bone Grinder Giant is normally depicted wielding an entire Bretonnian trebuchet as its club, which is hilarious. So give me the Bone Grinder Giant as like the uber giant, the super giant to giant all giants. I haven't said giant enough giant times. Then if sticking with the monster theme, Yetis. Give me the Yetis. So the ice furry Yetis that come down from the snowy peaks of the mountains to help out their ogre allies. You know, frostbite attacks, lots of armor piercing, very fast. Maybe have some additional debuffs when they're fighting units to represent like the numbing cold and stuff like that. And then the Thunder Tusk. We have to get the Thunder Tusk. So just like how I kind of talked about earlier when it came to alternate kits, if you bought a Stonehorn, which we already have until Warhammer 3, the Stonehorn was a kit that could be built into one of two creatures. The other creature it could be built into is the Thunder Tusk, which is a giant ice-themed ancient monster that has these two giant tusks coming out the front. And not only is it an absolute like badass in close combat, it has like this aura of frost around it that like really, weakens people, and it has frostbite attacks, and it's really, really strong and really, really tanky. But it also is able to shoot people with what's called, I think it's a sphere of frost, or it's like Frost Wreath Sphere or Sphere of Ice or something like that. But these creatures are so cold. They are so like magically imbued with the essence of frost that they are able to manifest with their breath these orbs of like ice that is so cold it's like sucking in all of the warmth around it and freezing it, and they're able to launch that shit as a projectile. So they kind of like vomit or like spit these ice balls at people that if they slam into you, it fucking hurts because it literally freezes you to death. Like you just freeze solid and die. Which, fun fact, is actually how they eat, because they can't eat like warm stuff. They have to like freeze it to consume it. But they're super really badass monsters. So that's kind of like what I'm thinking with Gark. The alternative option with like Golgfag, kind of still want to get the Thunder Tusk regardless as the big monster. But I also would love to see more Noblars. So there are different kinds of Noblars. One type are the, are they called? They're man killer Noblars, man trapper Noblars. Oh God, my brain. Hold on, I've got it right here. Oh, good God. Oh man. My brain hurt. They could do, for Lords and Heroes, they could actually do, I would not be upset, to be honest with you, if they decided to come out and give us Noblar characters, because Noblar characters were a thing. Like you could take a Noblar hero that was capable of riding on they were called honchos and head honchos. So the honcho was the hero version, the head honcho was the Lord version, and they could quite literally ride on, like, they would ride on a Rhinox, but there'd be like a bunch of other Noblars up there with them, which was hilarious. Man-biters, that's what I was thinking of. So man-biters are like really swole Noblars that have flails. I think that would be a hilarious unit that would actually have like a really interesting impact on the battlefield. There are also pigback riders, which are not what you think. I'm sure you just thought I was talking about pig cavalry, weren't you? Yeah? No, they're piggyback riders. Pigback riders. So they are Noblars riding on the backs of other Noblars. So silly. So you just have a Noblar who's holding his buddy on top of him, and his buddy has like a shield and a spear. So Noblar cavalry is just Noblars on other Noblars. That could be a very fun unit, a very stupid unit, I might add, but a very fun unit. There are blood Noblars, which are kind of they're like the best trappers. So they're kind of like trappers on steroids. There are, of course, Boglars, which are Noblars that are known more swamp goblins or marsh goblins. But Boglars are, kind of more aquatic, though I don't really think they bring anything very unique to the table. And then there's Lucky Gits, which are kind of an elite form of Noblars that are known for being, because they're lucky, they're kind of tankier. For me personally, I think the Man-biters would make the most sense and would offer the most to the roster. I love the pigback riders. Conceptually, I don't really think they would add much of value, to be honest, other than just being funny. But I think if we got Man-biters, an elite unit of ogre man-eaters that allows for more customization. Granted, that could just be Golgfang Man-Eater's mechanic, is that his man-eaters can be upgraded to have like unique skills and attributes and abilities. That could just be his unique mechanic as opposed to a completely different unit. So maybe you could say like, okay, he gets a Thunder Tusk as the big monster, he gets Man-Biter Noblars, and he gets Pigback Riders. Cool. And then like a Bruiser Ogre. And maybe like a head honcho, and then give us the rest of our missing Lords of Magic. I would buy the shit out of that. So that's our ogres. Legendary hero, it has to be the headsman. Oh my god, I'm just struggling lately, guys. Like, I don't know where my brain has gone, but like I am having such a hard time recently trying to remember what the fudge people are called. Brag the Gutsman. Jesus. So Brag the Gutsman is probably one of the most terrifying ogres from an ogre perspective. He is an ogre who found a very solid role as an executioner and like an ultimate duelist, but he specializes in killing other ogres in the most nightmarish way possible in their culture, which is that he built for himself a flail of a sort that it has like this big scoopy hook as the head of the flail, and he swings it around, and he's become such an expert with it that he can like very easily decapitate and slice through humans. But what it's really designed for is he flings it so that it catches on ogres' gut plates. And then when he pulls on it, it pulls around like a can opener and just rips through all the flesh around their ogre gut plate so that their insides just spill out. Because ogres are actually not designed like humans. All of their internal organs, like their important ones, are in their guts, their stomach, not like their heart isn't up here. It's down here in the belly drum. So for ogres, being eviscerated is the most nightmarish way to die possible for them. Like, that is terrifying to them. Like, it gets a visceral reaction from other ogres. Like, they're like, oh, like they can't look. It fucks with them that much. So Brag the Gutsman is not very well liked by a lot of ogres. Like, when he joins them to fight on a battlefield, they're like, oh yeah, we got Brag. But when they see him do his work, they're like, ugh, we don't really want that guy hanging around. Like, that guy's kind of bad juju. Let's yeah, you can go. So he is a tribeless ogre because no tribe will accept him. So he just kind of wanders around as pretty much a mercenary, working for whoever's willing to tolerate his existence. But he is a terrifying fighter. He has a very cool design between his very unique weapon, and he has styled himself in the form of a human executioner. So he wears like the full executioner's hood and like black clothing and stuff like that. And he's very sinister looking. He makes a great legendary hero. All right, on to greenskins. So if we do greenskins versus Khorne, I feel like it's got to be orky. Orcs are going to be smashing and bashing. So for the legendary lord, the only real option has to be Gorbad Ironclaw. So Gorbad Ironclaw is the OG badass orc warlord. He was the first big war boss that actually successfully invaded the empire and kicked the shit out of everybody. He pretty much he raised a lot of the empire to the ground, especially the Southern Empire, and he utterly obliterated the province of oh god, it's the province that Balthazar Gelt starts in now, because it's kind of not really a province anymore, because the population was so decimated by Gorbad that they just kind of like gave up on reforming it and absorbed it into Averland and Wizenland. You know what province I'm talking about. You can go look. But in any event, so eventually he was defeated during the siege of Altdorf, because during the siege, enough of his army got bored and kind of like ran off that he wasn't able to keep up the necessary surge to take the city. But the thing about him is he was smart. He is a very, very smart orc who knows tactics. He's not like Azhag, where Azhag is like kind of dumb, except for when the crown is talking to him, and then the crown made Azhag very scary. And Grimgor, which Grimgor doesn't give a fuck about tactics, right? He's just there to like rip people in half and fuck things up. He doesn't care as a general. He does not care at all about his army. Gorbad is the total opposite. He is a badass. Like, he can fight very well, but his big thing is that he is an incredibly skilled general, and he knows how to wield a greenskin army. So until the Siege of Altdorf, he was unstoppable. And at the Siege of Altdorf, he was literally only defeated because a lot of his army abandoned him because they got bored and they started like raiding the countryside and the places around Altdorf, and he couldn't keep control of them. And then when he tried to fall back to regroup, unfortunately for him, the dwarfs finally came out of their holds and they attacked him from behind, and his army was wiped out. Though he was never found, or at least if he was, the dwarves don't talk about it, which is weird because you figure if the dwarves had successfully killed such a powerful warlord, they'd brag about it and be like, we struck that out of the Book of Grudges. They never talk about Gorbad. So that heavily implies that he escaped and is somewhere out in the world regaining his strength. So for him to show up just somewhere far, far away, I think would make a lot of sense. And if Grom can come back, Gorbad can come back. But Gorbad, he has a badass design. He's got like his big old choppa weapon in one hand, and then he's Iron Claw. So he's got this big old like claw gauntlet on his other hand that looks super badass. He's also the pig character. He rides his Tuskbreaker, I think, Tuskilla, something like that. But he rides a big old nasty boar into battle, and he is like the boar boy king. He was pretty much unstoppable in personal combat. Like, nobody ever beat him in a fight because he absolutely knew how to throw down. Even though he was far more known for his intellect than his physical strength, he was no slouch. Like, he dominated other warlords. And I think he would be incredibly badass to see return. And being kind of the big pig rider character would offer a notably different and distinct theme from, the Black Orc badass that is Grimgor, or the wyvern riding sorcerer that is Azhag, or the great shaman character that is Wurzag. As far as what would come with him, I would say we need generic lord level shamans for orcs. I do not understand why we do not have orc great shamans yet. So I would say he should come with savage orc great shamans. Maybe the explanation being that like he's appeared like in the far east of the Darklands, or he's shown up in the far south of the Southlands. Like, he's shown up somewhere where like civilization is kind of like struggling, which would allow him to kind of really flex in that he's like takes over all these like savage orc tribes. Which allows him to have so I would go Savage or Great Shamans, so we finally get those Lord level big walk casters. Then for the hero, give me Savage Orc. Would I want a Savage Orc hero, or would I want a regular Orc hero? Like, we already have the Orc Warlord, right? So... And we don't have like a Savage Orc fighter. So yeah, give me a Savage Orc big boss. And I think for the Savage Orc big boss, I would lean into them being very anti-large, maybe. So or just very different from the Black Orc big boss. Where the Black Orc big boss is all like burn tanking and stuff. I would lean very heavily into like maybe a very anti-large focus, or maybe he's got like twin choppas and he's just all about like frenzied and dicing and slicing. But yeah, I think a Savage Orc big boss would be great. Then from there, for units, Savage Orc Big Stabbas. There we go. I was thinking something else for a moment. The Savage Orc Big Stabba. Have to give us Big Stabbas. Big Stabbas are literally giant, like these huge logs that have been carved into like giant spears that are carried by multiple Savage Orcs, and they're just like, and they run forward and just stab people. Usually it's two Savage Orcs carrying them. But I would go ridiculous anti-large on those things. Granted, whether you wanted them to be kind of like a weapon team, like the Skaven, where there's like several of them together, or alternatively, it could be like the Grail Relique, where there's just one. I don't think it matters either way, but it would be a hilarious unit. I would love to see that unit charging into combat. They're like stabbing people. It should be extremely high AP, high anti-large, and just designed to rip monsters apart. Like, it's carried on foot by Savage Orcs. So, not a lot of armor. They're going to have some physical resistance for their tattoos. But, really leaning into that idea of like, if this thing manages to get to you, you fucked up. You deserve to get shanked. After that, I would very much like to see Black Orcs with shields. Or alternatively, just give Black Orcs an active ability that allows them to switch out their weapons so they can go from great weapons to shields and vice versa. I see no reason why they cannot implement that for a unit that had that as a special rule in tabletop. That's literally what the rule armed to the teeth meant. Armed to the teeth meant that every time your Black Orcs got engaged in combat, you could choose what weapons they were wielding. You could either go sword and board, great weapon, or dual weapons. So give us a sword and board variant, or give us the toggle button. If you can't do that, then give us the sword and board variant. Next, so Black Orcs, Savage Orc, Big Stabba. I just like more Orc variants, to be honest. Give me Orc boys with spears. Like, now that the biggins are not really as much like an anti-large thing, they're just like a better thing. There's really no good, like, cheap anti-large for greenskins. Just give me regular Orc boys with spears and shields. Give me spears and shields. I will gladly take that. I would be so happy just to get Orc boys with spears and shields. Please. Like, God, greenskins are missing so many unit variants. As far as the big monster goes, I think for me, for the big monster, I would like, technically it's a goblin unit, but like, fuck it, who cares? Give me the colossal squig. Yep. Colossal squig. Granted, I like, honestly, I also feel like greenskins could kind of use that Champions of Chaos type DLC almost, because like, I would love a Forest Goblin themed DLC, a Squig themed DLC, and an Orc themed DLC at minimum. Hell, I can even go for a Savage Orc themed DLC. Like, there's like, all four of those cultures are so like still needing to be expanded, where it's like, I still need Mangler Squigs, Squig Gabas, Colossal Squig. I still need Orcs with spears, and like any other variants on biggins and regular Orcs and Savage Orc biggins and Black Orcs. Like, I'll take any of those variants. I still need the ability for my Goblin and Orc Lords and Heroes to ride their chariots. So let my Orc Lords and Heroes ride board chariots. Let my Goblin Lords and Heroes ride wolf chariots. There is a Goblin riding a fucking wolf chariot in the Ogre Kingdom quest battle for Grease's Goldtooth. So I know it can be done. There's a Goblin big boss who literally has a wolf mount. So come on, CA, give me my damn chariot mounts. For my Lords and Heroes. Like for Forest Goblins, I still need gigantic spiders as a mount option for my Goblin big bosses and Forest Goblin or Goblin Great Shamans. I would love to see like a Forest Goblin Fighter Lord would be kind of cool. I'd love to see gigantic spiders as a like a monstrous cavalry unit, because that would be a really unique thing. I'd really love to get a Ragnarok spiders with flingers, where they have like catapults on their backs that fling webs at people. That's less about dealing damage and more about debuffs, but like an alternate version of the Ragnarok would be really cool. I would take all of those, please. So yeah, that's it for the greenskins. As far as legendary heroes go, I feel like the easiest legendary hero choice, as far as it's a character who only really works as a hero and I would not want them as a lord, would be Gatilla the Hunter. Gatilla the Hunter is a Wolf Rider goblin who originates from the Wolflands. He is not a hobgoblin. Some people think he is. He's not. He's a regular wolf riding goblin. But he rides a super badass giant she-wolf, and he has all sorts of really, really cool gimmicks as far as like his weapon selection goes, because there is like Snaggla Grobspit, the Forest Goblin Spider Rider character, but like I kind of almost want to save him for Spider Rider DLC, though personally I would much prefer getting a Goblin Shaman Legendary Lord, because we don't have a Goblin Shaman Legendary Lord. Like, there is no Goblin Caster Legendary Lord. So I would like Tenant Four Eyes. Tenant Four Eyes is a really powerful Forest Goblin Shaman character. I think he would make an excellent Legendary Lord. And if that's going to happen, like if you're going to give me Tenant Four Eyes, sure, give me Snaggle Grobspit as a legendary hero. But I would either take Snaggle Grobspit, the Forest Goblin legendary hero who rides a giant spider, and he's got like a spear that's made from a spider fang, and he's also got a poison bow. And then Gatilla the Hunter has a really powerful bow and his own fancy little spear as well. So any of those would be super cool. And that is all for the greenskins, which granted, that is a huge list. But in any event, I've been rambling for a super fucking long time. I hope you all enjoyed the video. This is the end for this particular quartet of speculation. Let me know what you think. As far as, do you think my ideas are great? Is there any character I didn't include that you're like, Sotek, how could you forget so-and-so? Like I did Dakala. Is there anybody that you think I suggested that you would not want to see? And let me know what you think. I think we might do kind of like a wrap-up video tomorrow, just to kind of talk a little bit in general about some of the ideas, and maybe I'll go back to the comments and read some thoughts and kind of answer those. And then after that, I'd really like to talk about that vampire count video I was talking about. And then there's some other subjects outside of Total War I'm probably going to be touching on in the near future. So hope you all have a great day. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Till then, bye-bye.